Okay, welcome everybody to what's the date today? February 13th, 2026 BFRW committee meeting of the State Building Code Council. If we can start with a roll call.
Roger Haringa,
I am here.
Todd Byerther,
Here.
Dan Young.
Here.
Thank you. Angela Haupt.
Here.
Katie Sheehan.
Here.
Thank you. Tom Handy
Here.
and Scott Bastiani. Scott, I didn't hear you when you unmuted, but I see you there. Still not hearing you. All right, so we do have a quorum present today.
About now.
Hearing you good.
Okay.
Thank you. And then Roger, if you were speaking, I got you on mute.
That's because I was on mute. Is anybody from the public that would like to introduce themselves and be recognized? And I'm
Not seeing any hands.
okay. I have just an introductory comment. Well, I'll hit that on agenda item 4. Never mind. So item 2 is review and approve the agenda. And before we make a motion, I would like to request that we switch item 6 and 7. The proponent for 24 GP 053 is not available, I think, until 11:15 or 11:30. So we can address that modification without Julius, but if he's there, it would be preferred. So I would request that we switch item 6 and item 7. With that, I am open to a motion and a motion, a second, and discussion.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
This is Dan,
I second.
I heard Tom and Dan. Thank you both. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 3, review and approve the minutes. So we have the minutes from
November
last
7th.
meeting, or the November 7th meeting. That you are seeing on the screen.
Move to approve as presented.
Thanks, Tom.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Scott. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, agenda item 4, which is the 2024 IBC single exit appendix. I have a couple of introductory comments. For those who have not been involved, it is critical that we understand that the single exit is a change to the International Building Code. The multiplex is a change to the International Residential Code. And trust me, in our tag, there was a whole lot of conversations and people got mixed up. Everybody got mixed up at least once, if not multiple times. So just be clear that as we talk about the single exit provisions, which will be first, that's a change to the building code. And then when we get to the multiplex, it's the residential code. Second item I wanted to do, and I just kind of wanted to get this out there, out into the public. Dustin and I did a little bit of looking back, trying to get an estimate on the number of hours that was put into the production of these two appendices that we've proposed. And just meeting times, we went back and looked at attendance. We had roughly 100 hours of staff time in meetings, and we guessed at about 500 hours of volunteer times. That is only the time spent in meetings. I would suggest to you that the staff time in creating agendas and minutes and managing documents might very well be double that. Call it 200. That's my back of the napkin guess. And there was certainly significant time put in by some individuals outside of the meetings as well. So for the two, and I want to recognize it's for both, my best estimate is 200 hours of staff time and 600 hours of volunteer time to produce these two documents. So I think there's been conversations about that, and I just wanted to make sure that we recognized all of the efforts of staff and volunteers, and everybody kind of understands the amount of work these two documents were. Finally, I just wanted to say, and I think I have mentioned this in the past, but the technical advisory group that we put together um, was, I believe, was a very, very good technical advisory group. I believe that we had the smartest minds in the state of Washington, from building, fire, representation from both sides of the state. I think it was an excellent group. We had a very, very thorough conversation. We aren't going to present it today, but there is a issues log that is posted on the website that basically will list all of the issues that were discussed, that 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 we discussed, and then came up with this final product. So that's the introductory remarks. Angela, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say thank you for putting those numbers together because I think that's really an important item to keep track of, especially so that as we get more and more legislative mandates, we can inform properly on those as to what the lift is for SBCC. So again, thank you for going through that exercise.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly why I wanted to do it and make sure people understand. So,
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want
Go
to
ahead.
add on to that one. So hearing from folks over the past year about volunteer time not being accounted, kind of spurred in this year's roll call sheets. We're going to be keeping track of the meeting times, and we've got the formulas in there to make it easy to calculate the time exposure for our volunteers in those meetings, and the time exposure for staff would just be the meeting duration time. But we also have that running so that we don't have to go back and recalculate after looking at all of our roll call sheets. This is a running accumulation of annual input, and we're making that metric available for all of our meetings. So moving forward, we should have better data on the exposure of volunteer time and staff time at meetings pretty much only, but I think that that's better than the no data that we're gathering right now on it.
Great. Thanks, Dustin. Any other comments before we get into the nitty-gritty of the single exit? Seeing no hands.
We got audience member with the hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I didn't see.
It's Micah. It's always Micah.
Oh, Micah, go ahead.
I appreciate all the hours too. I do want to throw out there that the proponents for these put in a ton of volunteer hours too, and I would be happy to calculate some hours for that. Originally, WABA, I know others put in proposals as well and took time. WABO did have two separate work groups for the single exit and the multiplex, and there were several hundred hours of time for that as well. So I'd be happy to share some of that data with our meetings and the subcommittee meetings and things like that as well to capture what it takes to actually get a proposal together, much less discuss it with the tags. Thanks.
I would appreciate that, Micah. And the WABO proposals were our baselines for both. Is that correct, Dustin? I know it was for the single exit. I think also for the multiplex. Was it
I
not?
believe so, but we do have folks that are active within WABO that also present on their own behalf as well. So sometimes I might get it mixed up. But I do think that both of those proposals came from the
Yeah.
WABO genesis.
So, Micah, we would love to have that. Again, I think this is, I'm not going to say the first, but this is our most recent experience at this process of being asked by the legislature to do specific tasks outside of the regular code cycle, and I think it's good for us to understand all of those hours that go into it. So, okay. What I was going to do, Dustin, before, so I think that the best process is I would like to kind of just describe at the, I'm going to call it the 5,000 foot level, some of the changes. So, clarifying the single exit provisions. Right now, you can do a single exit with 4 units per floor up to 3 stories within the International Building Code. That is allowed currently. Um, what I'd like to do is just list some of the high-level enhancements that the tag came up with to allow that to go up to 6 stories with a single exit. And you will see these as we go through the document, but I just wanted to hit the high level. So one of the things that we did is we've upgraded the sprinkler system from the residential sprinkler system, which is the NFPA 13R, to a commercial NFPA 13. So the sprinkler system is enhanced. And I'm not a sprinkler expert, but I believe there are more heads and more flow, both. So if you're going to go from 3 stories to 6 stories, you're going to need to do call it the commercial, the 13, not the 13R sprinkler system. We have
Roger, can I ask for a clarification? So when you
yes,
said go from 3 to 6, it's go from 3 to 6 with a single exit, right?
yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yes. Um, we have added that there are EEROs. What is EERO? I know what it is.
Emergency escape and rescue opening.
Yeah, it's basically the window that you can, break out or have access from a fire. We've required those in all sleeping rooms. There was discussion about that, but that was an upgrade. Um, we have the stair and elevator shafts have to be pressurized. If it's the only exit, we think you need to pressurize that shaft so the smoke does not get into it. We have upgraded the smoke alarm and fire alarm systems to notify residents of fire in other units. Right, particularly in the corridors, if it's the only exit, if there's a fire, we think that residents need to have to be notified. So we've upgraded the smoke alarm and fire alarm systems. And then a big one and something we spent a whole lot of time working on is we've provided criteria to determine the definition of a professional fire department. And that was required in the RCW. We were tasked with doing that. So we have provided criteria, and the arbiter of whether that is met is that it needs to be confirmed by the fire chief. And that also was a whole lot of conversation. So we can get into that as we go through it. I do want to add one other item that I feel like, and I don't want to, I feel like was really an enhancement for the ability to use this. The RCW said 6 stories and 4 units per floor. That was what the RCW said. What the tag produced and what is in the current proposal is 20 units total served by the single exit. So, for instance, if you are 6 stories, which the first story, the single exit would serve the top 5 stories. And we have a figure that kind of shows that. That would be 20 units. So you would have 6 stories at 20 units. If you want to go to 4 stories served by that single exit, you can have 5 units. And to be honest, the way this thing is worded, if you wanted to do 3 stories, you could do 6 units if you'd went through the upgraded sprinkler systems, pressurization, all of that type of stuff. So with the purpose of the RCW to really improve or allow for infill sites to be able to produce more units, to build more units, make it more cost effective to improve housing. We felt like that giving people that flexibility at 4 stories or I think 5 stories would still not work, but at 4 stories and maybe even 3 stories, it does allow everybody a little bit more flexibility. So that's the high level, enhancements from a code perspective, and then the change that we made to the where this appendix can be applied. So, Dustin, I think with that summary, the best thing for us to do is to just walk through. I will try to monitor hands. I think if you have a question as we go through this, feel free to raise your hand. We can talk about it. I know many of you have been involved in it, so feel free to, if I get something wrong or incorrectly state what was talked about, where we ended up, feel free to correct me. So, Dustin, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So as we run through here, at the top of these code change documents, I've been inserting kind of keys for what you would see in the text here. As we run through this one, we are acknowledging first that we're creating a brand new appendix in the IBC, and therefore there's no model code language to be shown, so you won't see any plain black text. We have no existing state amendments in here, so you won't see any red text. And since it's a new appendix, you won't see any blue text, which would signify 2024 model code changes. You also won't see any strike-through text on this one because this is all brand new language. And any emphasis has been removed from this document. And so all that you're going to see here is underlined text. There are some sections that are underlined as part of the draft work for insertion in the model code, or not the model code, but in the code books that'll be published. But for the purposes of what we're showing here, an underlined text represents brand new code language that we're bringing to this appendix. And so everything in here is underlined, not for any sort of emphasis, just showing that it is new for us.
And Dustin, if I can, so the document starts with the appendix, but towards the bottom there is some basically charging language in the code and,
Yes.
and in the WAC, I believe, that direct you to this appendix, but that's towards the bottom of the document.
Do you think it might be better to hop off there? So we as a group worked with the appendix first and then kind of developed the pointer language.
I actually like the pointer language first, Dustin. It's clear in my mind.
All right, I scrolled past it. So first we have WAC 5150003, and you'll see here the red text signifying a existing state amendment. And then we got strikeout for the 2021. This is for the 2024 edition. And we are just adding a pointer here. This is where we talk about how we adopt, or what is adopted for this WAC that is applicable to the International Building Code adoption in Washington. And in 003 and all of the codes, it says we adopt this edition. And if there's appendices adopted for use within that text as well, you'll see this mentioned here too. So at the end of this one, we are updating Appendix XX. The reason it's labeled as XX is that we're still drafting all the CR 102 stuff, and this one is going to get slotted in the best place that fits in with the rest of the appendices that are getting drafted in there. There's several Washington appendices that are in there, several amended Washington appendices or amended appendices that Washington has amendments to that are model code text. And so the appendices have been reorganized in the 2024 edition. And as we're drafting this, the XX will get updated to a 2-letter designation that will put it in line, most likely at the end of all the existing appendices, and get it ready for use in there. So that just signifies that we have this appendix available. In the main body of the 2024 IBC in chapter 10006, which is an egress chapter, we have shown here the black text, which is model code. We have the blue text showing 2024 code updates as compared to the 2021 code. And you'll see that most of this is left unchanged as far as the model code text goes for 2024. But we get to the single exit section. And we have an existing amendment here with just within the portion of the building served by the single exit. This wasn't changed by the single exit multiplex housing tag, and so will stay the same. The addition to this section is a new, not exception, but just a condition that allows you to have single exits if it exists. So, in accordance with the legislation, we're looking at Group R2 apartment houses complying with Appendix XX shall be permitted to have a single exit. And this is just the pointer within the building code because this appendix is intended to be adopted for use statewide, not as an optional adoption that's ready for adoption by local ordinance. So if you have the condition of Group 2 apartment houses, you will be allowed to design per Appendix XX if you choose. And then just for clarity, as we run through here, the remainder of 10,006 is included for the discussion amongst the tag, but there's no further modification within the IBC 10,000 or 1,006. We also have the same text in the 2024 IFC. We have the existing state amendment for condition number 1. And similarly, we have added condition number 6 down here, which just points to the International Building Code Appendix XX for single exit. And this is just a correlation. The exiting and several other chapters within the IFC and IBC are identical. And so if we have amendments in one, it's prudent to bring them across in both texts. And those are the kind of priming language and pointers within the main body of the code. And so now I'm going to hop back up to the top of our document and start at the beginning of the appendix. So we have the section XX101, which is the scoping and purpose of this one. There was discussion about user notes and things like that. They typically will be placed before chapters or before appendices, and it was thought more prudent to bring language from those into the actual code text, as the user notes are kind of considered commentary and are not necessarily enforceable. So we brought the language down into scoping. It's filtered into a couple other sections as well. And there's some folks on the call that if I missed something and you want to raise your hand, please do. I'm trying to keep an eye on that as well. But we brought user notes into the main body to make it all enforceable language. So looking at the scope, you'll notice that 101.1 Appendix XX applies to structures served by a professional fire department meeting the requirements of 102.1. That is one of the key things that we talked about, had lots of discussion on, was professional fire departments and what that means. And we talked about different methods and different metrics to try to apply to those fire departments to make sure that we were going to get the level of service that would be needed to respond to an emergency in a structure of this type of design. And so we'll get to what those criteria are in section 102. And then the purpose of this appendix is stated clearly there in 101.2 that it's an alternative method. This isn't a requirement for anybody to design all buildings that are up to 6 stories with a single exit. It's intended as an alternative to reduce the overall space requirements needed to build smaller residential units. So a lot of the legislation we've seen and tasks for the SBCC are in the spirit of bringing more affordable middle level housing to the market available for Washingtonians to address the housing desert that we seem to be facing right now. And so it's intended to reduce cost as an option of design. All right. Getting into section 102 is where we talk about the criteria for the professional fire department. And I will apologize now if I do butcher any of this. I am not a fire department by trade in the past, but I do believe that we have talked about it pretty good, and I can probably get through most of it. But I do encourage anybody who might want to add on to raise hands during this section. So a professional fire department is defined in RCW. We got 35.103.020 subsection 5 and RCW 5233.020, and shall be capable of occupant rescue using an aerial ladder fire apparatus, compliant with the NFPA 1901. So when I hear aerial ladder apparatus. Sometimes I mistaken think that it's probably a helicopter or something coming in. But correct me if I'm wrong, any of the fire guys on this call, that a aerial ladder is just a ladder truck that you used to see in the cartoons. It might have the two drivers, one driving the back and the front, but this is capable of getting you to that sub high rise level of rescue in a building. And is that accurate? And I guess I
Yes.
see no hand. Awesome. Thank
Yes.
you. All right. So, as far as being a professional fire department, there are documents that show this to I guess the state, and we have some documents that the local fire code official would be seeking from a fire chief who is responsible for conducting emergency operations in the territories of construction like this. So we have some policy statement capable of having the aerial apparatus available within proper times of these structures, appropriate staffing levels, and certification and training of staff. And then if upon submittal of all those documents, there might still be a question by the fire code official. Additional documents are available to be requested, and those documents are left to the discretion of the fire chief and the fire code official to work out as they get this done to make sure that the level of safety is maintained. I think the big concern here is that if the fire department is unable to respond to a structure designed like this, that significant loss of life and property can occur. And so we want to make sure that we're able to respond appropriately. I'm seeing some shifting stuff. In here, we have more about the documents, the performance statement, alternative means of compliance. So we talk about mutual automatic aid agreements. So if a local jurisdiction isn't capable and they have an agreement in place to bring resources from outside of their immediate area in that can respond as appropriate, that's okay, as long as everybody's confident that the need is met. There's inspections in here. The fire code officials authorized to conduct inspections no less than annually to determine extent of compliance with these provisions. If some of these exit ways are blocked by, stuff put in the hallways by residences, trash pickup, etc. Could lead to reduced egress pathways and increased egress times. And so maintaining these buildings in a safe manner is prudent as well. So inspections are authorized by this appendix. Then we get to the single exit in a group 2 apartment house. In addition to the means of egress requirements of Chapter 10, not more than 5 stories of group R2 apartment houses are permitted to be served by a single exit underneath the following conditions. So this is where the bulk of kind of the design considerations are spelled out for what is needed in a single exit building. We've touched on number 1, the building has not more than 6 stories above grade plane. And we have a user note in here to clarify that further. 5-story limitation in section 102.2 does not prohibit an R2 apartment occupancy from being located on the first story of a 6-story building. For a 6-story building with a single exit stairway, the R2 apartments or other occupancies are permitted on the first story, provided the required means of egress for the occupancies do not commingle with the ones coming down from the levels above. All right. Number 2, other occupancies are permitted in the same building, provided they comply with all the requirements of this code. So on the levels 2 through 6, you can't have anything but the R2 occupancies. On the lower levels, or on the lowest level, you can have other, potentially commercial occupancies or anything else in there, provided that separations and egress components are maintained. Occupiable roofs are not permitted. There is an exception to this one, or I guess there's an exception to the other occupancies. We got the parking garages are also permitted to communicate with the exit stairway. Occupiable roofs other than private roof decks up to 750 square feet are not permitted. And this allows for private decks within a residence to have that deck, but the idea is that you're not increasing you're creating like an assembly area on the top of this R2 building where you have maybe mass egress from the top required. We have number 4, the building shall not have an occupied floor, including mezzanines or an occupiable roof located more than 75 feet above the lowest level of fire department access. This is a prohibition on high rises and is where that aerial ladder apparatus threshold lies. So you go above this, then the ladder trucks can't get to you. And I guess you're using the old jump out the window and trampoline tactic if you have to, but we're not allowing that. So, the building shall be equipped throughout the building or shall be equipped throughout with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with section 903.3.1.1. For those who might not know, 903.3.1.1 is the NFPA 13 sprinkler system that Roger was mentioning earlier. This one, I believe you can go higher in the building with these. You get better coverage with the sprinkler heads as compared to the 13D systems, which were the second option that was discussed in these buildings. Making sure I didn't mess anything up on that sprinkler statement from fire folks. All right, seeing no hands, I will assume that it's a good one. So the manual fire alarm system that activates the occupant notification system shall be installed. So this is an upgrade as compared to what would be allowed in a 2-exit building of the same size and height. They're not required throughout the building where all the following conditions are met. We have an automatic sprinkler system with 903. With 903.3.1.1. You also need the notification appliances activated upon sprinkler flow, and not fewer than 1 manual fire alarm box is installed at an approved location. So if you don't have the following criteria for the exception, you need a full-on manual fire alarm system or fire alarm notification system. An automatic smoke detection system shall activate upon occupant notification system installed throughout the following locations. We have common spaces outside of dwelling units, so hallways, any sort of other appurtenances right there. Laundry rooms, mechanical equipment rooms, and storage rooms outside of dwelling units in all interior corridors serving the dwelling units. This will ensure that if a corridor or egress component is filled with smoke, that this is detected and dealt with appropriately. Number 10, Todd, go ahead. Todd, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
No, I'm sorry, I was having trouble. Thank you for this. Can someone, not debating this point, but can someone explain the discussion around, because we got asked by the legislature, a 13R system with some 13 provisions? Was that ever discussed? Just so we can get that out.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, this was discussed, and a 13R is limited to 4 stories. So, and then you're doing
Right.
a combination, which just kicks you to a 13 system, which is, going to be easier for the designers and stuff instead of trying to go 13R 13 type of thing. It's just a convoluted way of doing it. But because the 13R is limited to 4 stories and this goes up to 6, then you're required to have a full 13 system.
Correct. Thank you, Dan. And by no means am I, debating. I was just asked and didn't have an answer.
No, I get it.
Because I don't have the.
We had lots of discussions of this ourselves. So, but that's the basic thing is the 13R is their standard says up to 4 stories. So we'd be violating the standard.
Okay. And is there precedent? I didn't have an answer for this either, for a 13R system with enhanced 13 sprinkler spacing, things like that. I didn't have an answer for that question.
Yeah, it doesn't. I guess the best way I could describe it doesn't make sense because now you're going to be trying to combine the 13R and the 13 standards.
Yep.
And you just use the 13 standard and designers are used to it. Installers are used to it. Inspectors are used to it. You're not saving that much money by trying to do that. You're actually going to cost more money by the time all the delays and everything else. So.
Okay. That's a good answer. Thank you. I just didn't have it. So appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
And Todd, I would add, there was discussion about doing something in between, and the sprinkler representative said, you're just going to mess up it way too complicated, and there's not really much benefit. And then in addition, I will just add, there were many topics that were talked about. The upgraded sprinkler system and the pressurization really were kind of the two basic, as we looked at other things, we often came back to, oh yes, but we have an upgraded sprinkler system. So it was very important. It was a very important upgrade as far as the tag was concerned.
Yeah, it allows for a lot of other trade-offs.
Yes, yeah.
Very good clarification. Thank you.
Give me one moment, just updating some notes. All right. All right, looking forward, number 10, single and multiple station smoke alarms shall be installed in accordance with 907.2.11. Then number 11, habitable spaces and dwelling units shall be provided with visible alarm notification. Visible alarm shall be activated by the in-room smoke alarm and the building fire alarm system. This is an upgrade just to bring more awareness by the occupants of these buildings to potential emergent situations. Number 12 is talking about corridor protection. So a minimum half-hour fire resistance rated corridor shall separate each dwelling unit entry exit door from the door to an interior exit stairway, including any related exit passageway on each floor. Dwelling unit doors shall not open directly into an interior exit stairway. Dwelling unit doors are permitted to open directly into an exit stairway. This is just talking about corridor protection. There shall be no more than 20 feet of travel to the exit stairway from the entry exit door of any dwelling unit. So this prevents overly long corridors to travel to the protected exit stairway shaft. Gives plenty of occupant time to get there, and shouldn't lead to dead end corridors as well. Then number 14 segues into the exit access travel distance shall not exceed 125 feet. So from the most remote point within a dwelling unit and to the exit access, you won't have or should not have a more than 125 feet of travel distance there. And that is, I believe, consistent with other exit travel distances and other occupancies.
Dustin,
Yes,
I
sir.
just wanted to add, there was conversation about limiting the floor plate size. And the tag really got comfortable with this particular section being in there, that limiting a floor size was not really a requirement. That's how we got comfortable with not putting a maximum floor size.
Thank you, Roger. Then an exterior exit stairway or interior exit stairway shall be provided. The interior exit stairway, including any related exit passageway, shall be pressurized to keep it clear of smoke, in accordance with 909.6.3 and section 909.20. Doors in the stairway shall swing into the interior exit stairway regardless of the occupant load served. Doors from the interior exit stairway to the building exterior shall swing in the direction of exit travel. Prevents pileups in the doors, preventing the doors from opening. Stairway shaft pressurization equipment shall be connected to legally required standby power per section 909.21.5. For the purposes of this section, legally required standby power shall comply with the 2023 NEC section 701.12, options D, E, F, or H, or subsequent revised section numbers. So this legally required standby power brings some redundancy to the operation of the smoke pressurization system to ensure that exit shaft remains clear. It creates that pressure differential within the shaft of a higher pressure that when the doors open, it should also help close those doors. But when they are open, air will escape from the passageway, pushing smoke and other contaminants in the air out. Elevator hoistway openings shall be protected in accordance with section 3006.3, where approved by the building official. Natural ventilation is permitted to be substituted for pressurization where the ventilation would prevent the accumulation of smoke or toxic gases. Hoistway shaft pressurization equipment shall be connected to legally required standby power per 909.21.5. For the purpose of this section, legally required standby power shall comply with 2023 NEC sections that were listed earlier. So where the elevators come down and you have the hoistway opening and closure, those are required to be protected as well to prevent undue exposures to the exit passageway. The exit serving the Group R occupancy shall not discharge through any other occupancy, including an accessory parking garage. So the parking garage is allowed to communicate, but you're not allowed to discharge through the parking garage to the public way, ensuring that you don't get trapped in other places where you're trying to egress through. The exit shall not terminate at an egress court where the court depth exceeds the court width unless it is possible to exit in either direction to the public way. This just ensures that if you come out in a slightly confined space, that you still have adequate egress capacity to get to the public way. Openings within 10 feet of an exterior exit stairway or non-rated exterior walls of the interior exit stairway enclosure shall be protected by opening protectives, having a fire protection rating of not less than 3/4 hour. This is just to protect the adjacent exposures from or the exit stairways from adjacent exposures that might occur with building configuration. And then emergency escape and rescue openings shall comply with section 1031 and shall be provided in all sleeping rooms on all floors served by the single exit. And I will pause there before we get into anything else. Is there any comments before we move on through this document? Those are the prime considerations. And then we got some graphics and some follow-up code language towards the bottom here. All right, I'm not seeing any hands cropping up, so I'll move on. This is a graphic depicting a egress pathway from the 6th story. We got the 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd stories all communicating down to the 1st level, but you'll notice that the 1st story is not included in the egress path out there. So the means of egress, 2nd and 6th stories to one side, means of egress for the 1st stories to the other side. This graphic doesn't represent all configurations of all buildings, but it does demonstrate the need for the 1st story to egress separately from the remaining stories above.
Dustin, the note on the right, I might mention as well, there was conversation on the enforcement side of is it clear that you can have residential units on the 1st story, or is it interpreted that this is a podium and with no residential on the lower level? That was not the intent. So we very clearly said that R2 apartment or other occupancies are allowed. So just wanted to make it really clear that R2 apartments are allowed on the 1st story.
And John Sue, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and there's a user note further up that kind of points to this figure that tries to explain the same thing in words.
And this points to figure XX102.2.
Yeah, and as Roger said, there was some concern about, does this mean I can't have apartment units on the ground floor? And the idea is, yes, you can, but they have to exit. So they can't use that single exit as their required exit.
Yep. And that does, I believe, bring us to the end of the proposed new appendix for the building code. We went over the WAC 5150.003 and the changes proposed there, and the proposed changes in the IBC Chapter 1006 and IFC 1006 as well. Scott.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So on the ground floor, secondary exit still could not exit into the stairwell, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If I can answer that, if it's a required exit, It doesn't mean you can't communicate with it. You can have a um, uh, door that goes into the stair on the ground floor. It's just that it can't be the required exit for that ground floor.
Thank you, John.
Todd?
Thank you. Just for the purpose of the meeting, can someone just quickly walk through how one with a couple of the likely construction types would achieve that sixth floor and horizontal separation and so forth?
Um, there are many. I mean, I think that the standard one, the standard
Roger,
one,
I'm sorry. I guess the question is, are there any special provisions that are different than the base code?
no, and in fact, we very specifically list all the construction types up someplace. It's one of the first ones. Item 6. There are many, many construction types that are available there. There are, and I'm not a expert on construction types, but there are a few that are excluded. But for the most part, you can build it per the code.
The
I
Seattle
think
provisions for the six-story type 3, is there something similar to that? I don't think so.
No.
no, there's not. So again, you asked about what are some types. I think everybody, particularly at the beginning of the process, thought of this as a one-story concrete podium with 5 levels of wood on top. But there is a lot of conversation about, well, we could use different systems, certainly mass timber, cold form steel. There are different construction types that could be used for this. So that's where we came up with this list of allowed construction types. And somebody also have to help me with what we excluded. But those that we excluded were pretty clear.
But a 2-hour horizontal separation was never discussed?
No, no.
Okay.
That would be per code. And John, you raised your hand. If you could help
Yeah.
answer.
In answer to Roger, your question, what was excluded were type 5B, type 3B, and I think 2B. Those are basically non-rated types of construction. We wanted to make sure there was at least 1 hour, rated construction in the building. But everything else is, you just go back to base code provisions.
Chair, sorry, I'm not raising my hand. I'm just
Go
driving.
ahead. No.
But John, you know what I'm asking. No, was there ever a discussion about a 2-hour horizontal separation provision like Seattle has for the type 3A?
No, we
Or
didn't
no?
discuss that.
Okay.
You'd have to adopt that separately from a single exit. That was a whole not within our charge, as I recall.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds right to me too. Okay, other questions? And Todd, feel free. Your hand is still up.
If I can get help taking it down, thank you.
I gotcha.
Attendee. Ken, go ahead.
Could you scroll up to 102.1.1, number 2? I just think that you need an editorial cleanup on that. Either get rid of the word of or put sufficient aerial ladder apparatus to reach, something like that. But number 2 just doesn't flow correctly.
So you would propose to remove that of?
The simple aerial ladder fire apparatus sufficient to reach. Yeah, you could say sufficient aerial ladder fire apparatus to reach. So yeah, either one, but I just don't think this needs to get cleaned up.
That seems like a reasonable grammatical edit. Anything else? Well, then I would be ready to ask for a a motion to move this on to the full council for consideration for consideration.
I'd like to make a motion to move this as presented to the full council.
Thank you, Nan.
Second.
Who is the second?
Me, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Any further discussion? I will clarify, just this will move on to the full council and then it will go into the CR 102. So there will still be an opportunity for full public comment on the proposal. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's see, let's jump into what agenda item? I think it's 4. Nope, 5, the multiplex. And I will start this off with again a summary. There is a document that we have pulled together that has not been fully vetted that kind of describes the difference between the IRC, the IBC, and where this multiplex falls kind of in between those. So again, the International Residential Code, you can do a single residence or duplex up to 3 stories. Correct me if I'm wrong, say anything wrong here. This just allows you to do up to 6 dwelling units up to 3 stories out of the residential code. You always have the ability if you have a project where you want to go beyond what we've allowed here in the multiplex, you just jump into the IBC. So we think that we've accommodated many opportunities here to build 6 plexes up to 3 stories. If there is a condition that you don't meet that, it really is just simply you go to the IBC to build it. So I don't know that I have anything else on the high level. I think, Dustin, maybe we jump right into it.
Okay. And let me start with our pointers to the appendix first again. Well, maybe we don't have them. So we've been working on pointers for stuff out of the stuff at the building code as well, or the building code tag. So I might have conflated that a little bit. All right. So Appendix XX in multiplex buildings. This is intended to provide. John, go ahead.
Sorry, Dustin, the pointers are in part 1 above.
Oh, thank you, John. I missed it completely. All right, so part 1, section R101, scope and general requirements. We have a change to the 101.2 main body code language, just bringing in a new exception, which allows the multiplex building shall be permitted and constructed in accordance with the IRC for 1 and 2 family dwellings as modified by Appendix XX. Once again, the Appendix XX is just a placeholder for the final lettering number name that we're looking for on this drafting. Within the main body of the code, we amended some definitions and we amended one definition and added another. So the definition of building adds multiplex into that definition. So any 1 or 2 family dwelling or townhouse or multiplex or portion thereof intended to be used for human habitation for living, sleeping, cooking, or eating purposes, or any combination thereof, or any accessory structure. And then a multiplex is defined, a building of up to 3 stories containing 3 to 6 dwelling units consolidated into a single structure with common walls and floors. And those are all the pointers we have in here to this one. I do suspect that a WAC 5151003 amendment should be considered. We do have some sections in the code that talk about this is where we would place this code or this appendix as available for local adoption. This one's not a mandatory across the state, if I recall correct. Is that your Roger?
No, it is mandatory across the
Okay.
state.
Then that's my bad.
I think in the conversation that we had, we felt like if these changes are made to the IRC, that is clear enough that it allows statewide, you can build these
Okay. Then I
on the
will
IRC.
move forward then from there then. Getting into part two, the actual appendix language. We have a user note on this one. This one's intended to provide special requirements that, in addition to the base model code, apply to multiplex buildings while maintaining life safety and public health in an effort to provide more affordable construction of housing in accordance with RCW 19.27.800, which is the location of the bill that passed that directs this SBCC to create this multiplex appendix. Getting into section XX 101 for scope. Buildings meeting the following conditions are permitted to be constructed in accordance with the IRC as modified. Multiplex buildings are subject to all of the following conditions. The building is limited to residential apartment use only with no common use areas, with an exception that common use areas used for means of egress, for bicycle parking, mail packages, shared laundry, or trash bins are permitted where such areas are separated from the rest of the building in accordance with XX 103.3 or 104 as applicable. The total floor area of the building shall not exceed 8,000 square feet. The building shall not exceed 3 stories above grade plane and shall not exceed 60 feet in height, with the exception that mezzanines and lofts are permitted in accordance with sections R314 and R315. And Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the total square footage of the building, since we don't have the egress type requirements from the International Building Code that we're bringing into this one, the square footage limitation was kind of where we addressed the egress travel distance on this one.
Yes.
Okay. And then further, a multiplex building not complying with all of the above conditions shall be designed in accordance with the International Building Code unless otherwise specified. Multiplex buildings designed using this appendix shall comply with the provisions of the International Fire Code for Group R2 apartment occupancies. So as Roger mentioned earlier, if you're trying to build in the IRC and you can't build per the model code, you might come to this appendix to build something that is kind of that bridge between IRC and IBC requirements. And if you can't build that building in accordance with this appendix, then you're kicked into the IBC for the full requirements. Modifications. Local jurisdictions are permitted to amend or supplement the provisions of this appendix following the procedure outlined in WAC 5104.035 to address regional needs or hazards subject to consistency with the intent of the IRC. This does allow local control over this, but since it does impact the residential construction, a notice to SBCC would be required and approval of the ordinance changing this code text would need to be approved by SBCC before being enforceable within the jurisdiction according to this WAC. All right, we have some other definitions that we're bringing into this appendix, which are bringing more alignment with the International Building Code, and that's why they're in the appendix instead of in the main body of the code. So these terms are only applicable within this appendix. We have a definition for automobile parking space. This one is added in here for some clarification of electric vehicle charging requirements. We have automatic load management systems, similarly brought in for electric vehicle charging. We have a circulation path, which is an egress component definition. We have common use, which talks about the circulation paths and is also a component of our egress pathways out of these buildings. We have the definition of corridor added in here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but these are just brought over from the building code in here, except for the electric vehicle charging ones. John?
No, we did amend the corridor exit passageways. A lot of the ones dealing with exits because trying to get it into simpler language and something that would be more applicable to these multiplex buildings.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I also would just point out, just again at the high level, a building out of the IBC of this size would be required to provide EV charging. IRC buildings don't have much requirement for electric vehicle charging, so we arrived at something within this that is kind of in between the IBC and the IRC. We certainly felt like it meets the intent of the RCW. I don't remember the number for electric vehicle charging.
I'm not going to start spouting them off from memory. I'll get it wrong too.
Yeah.
But suffice to say that what you said was accurate. The IRC EV charging requirements are really only applicable if you have an attached garage or an attached carport. So if you just had street parking or parking lot parking, and this was strictly built per the IRC provisions, you would get no EV charging infrastructure with these buildings. And like Roger said, we feel that requiring something is in alignment with the statute to require EV charging in the building codes. All right, we have the EV ready parking space, another electric vehicle charging one. We have exit passageway, exterior exit stairway, fire protection rating, fire resistance rating, interior exit stairway, means of egress, and opening protective. These definitions were felt as needed to make sure that the clarity of the text that we have contained in this appendix is there for code users. So these definitions help everybody get there. Getting into XX 103 fire protection features, we have fire resistance rated assemblies, where fire resistance rated assemblies are required by this appendix. The assembly shall comply with this section. The rating shall be determined in accordance with one of the following. We have a prescription or a prescriptive fire resistance pathway through section 721 of the IBC, where tested in accordance with ASTM E119 or UL 263, or where established by an analytical method in accordance with 703.2.2 of the IBC. The continuity and supporting construction are required to maintain the fire resistance rating for the assemblies and stuff supported by the construction and be continuous to the exterior walls of the building. Opening protectives and smoke draft control assemblies required by this appendix shall comply with this section. The fire protection ratings for opening protectives are in accordance with NFPA 252 or UL 10C and shall be labeled. Smoke and draft control shall be tested in accordance with UL 1784 and shall be labeled. Dwelling unit and common use area separations. Dwelling units shall be separated from each other by wall and floor assemblies having not less than a 1 hour fire resistance rating. Common use areas shall be separated from other portions of the building by wall and floor ceiling assemblies having not less than a 1 hour fire resistance rating. This brings into the code requirements similar separations that are contained within the building code. In most dwelling units, even the duplexes and townhouses have a resistance assembly in between them, but because these can be both side by side and on top of each other, we needed some additional clarification. Openings in walls and floor ceiling assemblies separating dwelling units or separating dwelling units from common use areas shall not be permitted. Duct and air transfer openings between the dwelling units or between dwelling units and common spaces, common use areas shall not be permitted. Openings in walls separating dwelling units from the means of egress shall comply with section 104. Opening in walls separating common use areas shall be provided with opening protectives with a minimum fire protection rating of 1 hour. Penetrations shall be protected in accordance with R302.4, and penetrations of interior exit stairways shall also comply with 104.4.2 of the appendix. Multiplex buildings shall be equipped throughout with an NFPA 13R automatic sprinkler system. And that's with section 903.2.8 of the IBC. Should I pause there for a discussion on the 13R versus anything else that we were talking about?
I would just, and hopefully I'm not misrepresenting, but the IRC, some buildings need to be sprinkled but many do not. What we're saying is if you're going to do the multiplex, thou shalt use a 13R system. And we tried very, very hard, excuse me, very, very hard to not direct to building code because the intent is that this is all built out of the IRC and those people that are used to building out of the IRC. But in this case, we felt like that the sprinkler system, the NFP 13R, that's where all the information is contained. So,
Thank you, Roger. Portable fire extinguishers are required in each dwelling unit, and of the kind 2A 10BC. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are probably the most frequently seen fire extinguishers that you see on walls out there. Fire department access and water supply shall comply with the locally adopted fire code. Alternative materials, designs, and methods are subject to approval by the fire code official. Fire separation distance for multiplex buildings shall be in accordance with table R302.1 number 1 and 302.1 number 2 and shall not apply to fire separation distances. No, sorry. They shall comply with 302.1 number 1. Table 302.1 number 2 shall not apply for multiplex buildings. Any other questions on fire separation or fire protection? Not seeing any hands. Getting into means of egress. Generally, spaces in multiplex buildings shall be provided with a minimum of one means of egress in accordance with this section. In addition to the requirements in section R318, multiplex buildings with dwelling units have access to a single means of egress from a first, second, or a third story above grade plane shall have a maximum of 4 dwelling units on each story. With a user note, figures XX104.1 number 1 through XX104.1 number 6 are provided to illustrate examples of protection for the means of egress. They are for information only and do not supersede requirements in the text of this appendix.
Dustin, I think jumping down, yeah, is that what you're going to do?
Yes, sir.
Showing people those figures is helpful.
So let me zoom out just a little bit so we can see them fully. This figure 1041 number 1 is a unseparated building with interior or exterior stair. And John, you were the drawer of these figures. Maybe you might be able to lead us through exactly what they're showing between them
Yeah.
a little bit more succinctly than I can.
Yeah, so this is just an illustration of upper stories, the second and third stories, assuming there's 2 units on each story. And the case here is that the units open directly into the stair. And so this kind of shows what the wall and opening ratings are supposed to be in that case, the separations and protection of that stairway. So this can be an interior or exterior stair. The next figure is then if you've got an exterior stair or interior stair, and you put a door between, well, the units then open into a corridor, and then you go into the stair, and it's separated again. The idea is to kind of give an idea what fire resistance ratings are required in opening protections. Again, second, that's the upper stories. This is the ground story. Sorry, keep going. Thank you. This one is a ground story. If you open right directly to the outside, there's no separation. You've got an exterior stair. You can again take that exit path directly out from the building. And again, this shows you what fire protection and opening protections ratings are required. This is the same thing if you've got a ground level interior stair. You do need to separate it from the rest of the building. And so there's this exit passageway. It's kind of labeled right up in the top of the figure there. That is required, and there's some protection requirements there again. But the idea is The interior stair then goes into this exit passageway, and then you go outside. We do have an exception if you're only a two-story building, and you could have more than the 2 units, but the idea is, again, you can have you're allowed to do a direct exit out without as much protection as you would in the 2 or 3 story case, 3-story cases above. And so you're allowed reduced 20-minute protection for your smoke and draft controlled openings and the doors from the units, and only half-hour fire resistance rating. For those folks who are familiar with the building code, this is essentially corridor construction. And similarly, even if the exit way is enclosed, as shown here, if it's only 2 stories, you're still allowed to have these reduced protections. Corridor construction, basically. That's it. And we have language, hopefully, that corresponds to these.
Yes, we have language that does correspond, John. Not hopefully.
We tried.
Yes, I know. What I wanted to just point out again at the 10,000 foot, 5,000 foot level, no corridor information really is in the IRC, or little. I'm not going to say no, but little information is in there because you don't have, even in a duplex, you're not typically going into a corridor. So we had to add a whole lot of that. There's conversation about how to interpret proper interpretation of code language, which is not always easy to do, particularly with window fire ratings and that kind of stuff. So we really felt like having the exact language in the text, but then providing these figures was would be very helpful for the usability of this appendix. John, go ahead.
If I may add, yeah, the whole point of this section 104 means of egress is because, as Roger pointed out, the IRC does not contemplate shared exit paths. And so we had to put in a lot of things to protect that exit path.
Okay, Dustin.
All righty. So we're past the general and the user note. Means of egress continuity shall be continuous in accordance with all of the following. I think that most of this is familiar to folks familiar within the IBC, but provides a continuous and unobstructed access to the public way. Elements are permitted to include corridors, egress balconies, interior exit stairs, exterior exit doors, or a combination of those elements. The path of egress, travel along a means of egress shall not pass through any other rooms or uses. And interior and exit stairways shall be continuous from the point of entry into the stair to the exterior of the building, with an exception that interior and exterior exit stairways are permitted to be extended to an exterior exit door or the public way by an exit passageway at the ground level, provided both of the following conditions are met. And those conditions are that it is used only for egress or access to the dwelling units or common use areas, and that the passageway is separated from the rest of the building by a minimum 1 hour fire resistance rated construction and fire door assemblies. Then 2, the level of protection shall not be diminished along the path of egress travel, and obstructions shall not be placed in the minimum width of a means of egress component except projections permitted by this code. And one difference when we're talking about egress travel, there's no fire department inspections on these. Is that accurate? So there's no maintenance by the local jurisdictions. Once these are built, it's the occupants who are maintaining that egress path of travel.
Occupants or building manager.
Or building manager, yes. Egress dimensions from the dwelling unit to the public way shall not be less than 36 inches in width, which is similar to an IRC hallway, except for stairways shall be provided with a ceiling height of not less than 7 feet. travel distance from the most remote portion of the story to an exterior exit door or an interior exit or exterior exit stairway shall not exceed 125 feet. Guess I was a little bit remiss in saying that that's was the only limitation to the 8,000 square feet per floor or per dwelling, or sorry, per building, was not limited by exit travel distance. We still have that 125 feet in there. Doors in the path of egress travel from the dwelling units or common use areas to the public way that are required to be protected shall comply with the following. Clear width of 32 inches with the door in the open position. Doors shall be side hinged, swinging type. The operational force to operate the door shall not exceed 15 pounds and shall not exceed more than a 30-pound force to be set in motion and moved to a full open position when subject to not more than a 15-pound force. Should be a floor or landing on each side of a door at the same elevation on each side of the door. Exception, landings at exterior exit doors are permitted to be not more than 7 inches below the landing on the egress side of the door, provided the door does not swing over the landing. Landings at doors shall have a width of not less than 3 feet, and doors in the fully open position shall not reduce a required dimension by more than 7 inches. Thresholds at doorways shall not exceed a ½ inch above the finished floor. Doors required to have a fire protection rating shall be self-closing and provided with an active latch that will secure when the door is closed. Doors shall be readily openable from both sides without the use of key or special knowledge or effort, with the exception being a stairway exit door is permitted to be locked from the side opposite of the egress side, where the only interior access to the dwelling units is from an exit stairway. Unlatching of doors shall not require more than one motion in a single linear or rotational direction. To release the latching and locking device, manual bolts are not permitted. Seeing no hands, keep going. Means of egress illumination shall be provided from the exterior of the dwelling unit to the public way, and shall be under normal power, shall be not less than 1 foot candle at the walking surface. And at other places of more hazard shall be not less than 10-foot candles at the walking surface. Slip-resistant surface. The means of egress from the dwelling unit to the public way shall have a slip-resistant surface and be securely attached. Guards along walking surface and egress components shall comply with Section 321, except the guards adjacent to the means of egress shall have a minimum height of 42 inches, and that is a addition to the residential code. I believe the guard height in the residential code is 36 inches, not 42. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maintenance. The means of egress shall be maintained in a manner that does not reduce the minimum width or protection of the means of egress to less than the required by this appendix. We get down to the figures we already went over. We have corridors and exterior egress balconies. Corridors and egress balconies used for egress purposes shall comply with this section. Corridors shall have a minimum width of 36 inches and shall be limited to 20 feet in maximum length. Corridors shall be protected not less than a ½ hour, and openings shall be protected by smoke and draft control with a 1/3 hour fire protection rating, with an exception being exterior walls and corridors are permitted to be unrated where fire separation distance greater than 10 feet is provided. Egress balconies used for egress purposes shall conform to the same requirements as corridors for minimum width and length. The balcony shall be separated from the interior with opening protectives by walls and opening protectives as required for corridors. Openness. Exterior egress balconies shall be a minimum of 50% open, and the open area above the guard shall be constructed to minimize the accumulation of smoke. So no like reverse parapet walls that would trap some smoke curling around in there. Location. Exterior egress balconies shall have a minimum fire separation distance of 10 feet measured at right angles from the exterior edge of the balcony to the following, either the adjacent lot line or other buildings on the same lot. Exit stairways. Interior and exterior exit stairways shall comply with this section. Winders, spiral stairways, alternating tread devices, ship ladders, or other ladders are not permitted in an interior or exterior exit stairway. The riser height and tread depth shall have a maximum height of 7 inches and a minimum tread depth of 11 inches, which is in alignment with the IBC stairway requirements instead of the IRC requirements. Stairway landings shall be a floor or landing at the top and bottom of each stairway. The landing shall be measured not less than 3 feet in the direction of travel, and minimum depth measured parallel to the direction of travel and not less than 3 feet. So a 3x3 square. When fully open, doors shall not project more than 7 inches into the required width of a landing. Outdoor stairways and outdoor approaches to stairways shall be designed so that water will not accumulate on walking surfaces. Openings in the interior and exterior exit stairways other than unprotected exterior openings shall be limited to those necessary for egress from dwelling units. Openings for egress from common use areas allowed in accordance with XX 104.1.1 and for egress from the enclosure. Stairway construction shall be constructed in accordance with this section, and they shall not connect more than 2 stories. And shall be separated from the dwelling units by a half-hour fire resistance rated wall with 20-minute rated smoke and draft control openings. Such stairways are permitted to be unenclosed with a note figure XX 104.15 and XX 104.1 number 6 are illustrative of this example condition. So we went over those figures earlier. Exterior walls of exit stairways shall comply with the requirements of R302.1, where non-rated walls or unprotected openings enclose the exterior of the stairway and the walls or openings are exposed by other parts of the building at an angle of less than 180 degrees. Building construction within 10 feet of the exterior walls of the exit stairway shall comply with XX 104 as applicable. Interior exit stairways serving as an exit component and a means of egress system shall comply with the requirements of this section. An interior exit stairway shall not be used for any purpose other than as a means of egress and a circulation path. Interior exit stairway enclosures in these buildings shall have a fire resistance rating of not less than 1 hour. Openings in interior exit stairways other than unprotected exterior openings shall be protected by fire door assemblies with a fire protection rating of not less than 1 hour. And elevators are not allowed to open into the interior exit stairways. Penetrations into or through the interior exit stairways are prohibited except for the following: for fire protection systems, security systems, electrical raceways serving the stairway and terminating in a steel box within, structural elements such as beams, joists supporting the interior exit stairway, and structural elements supporting a roof at the top of the interior exit stairway. With the exception, membrane penetration shall be permitted on the outside of an interior exit stairway and shall be protected in accordance with R302.4.2. Enclosures under the interior exit stairway shall be protected by a 1 hour fire resistance rated construction, and access to the enclosed space shall not be directly from within the stairway enclosure. Exterior exit stairways serving as an exit component for multiplex buildings shall comply with the requirements of this section. The open side serving as an element of required means of egress shall be open to not less than 1 side except for required structural columns, beams, handrails, and guards. An open side shall have not less than 35 square feet of an aggregate open area adjacent to each floor level and the level of each intermediate landing. The required open area shall be located not less than 42 inches above the adjacent floor or landing level. The open areas adjoining exit stairways shall be either yards, courts, or public ways. The remaining sides are permitted to be enclosed by the exterior walls of the building. The exterior exit stairway shall have a minimum fire separation distance of 10 feet. Measured at right angles from the exterior edge of the stairway or ramps, including landings to adjacent lot lines or other buildings on the same lot. Exterior exits, construction, and opening protection shall be separated from the interior of the building by assemblies having a fire resistance rating of not less than 1 hour. Openings in exterior exit stairways other than unprotected exterior openings shall be protected by fire door assemblies with a fire protection rating of not less than 3/4 hour. where a vertical plane projecting from the edge of an exterior stairway and landing is exposed by other parts of the building at an angle of not less than or of less than 180 degrees. The exterior wall shall be rated in accordance with this subsection. The open space under the exterior stairway shall not be used for any purpose. Usable space is permitted, provided the space is completely enclosed in a 1-hour fire resistance rated construction. Getting to ramps. The exterior ramps from an exterior exit door to the public way shall comply with the following. Not have a slope steeper than 1 in 12. The slope measured perpendicular to the direction of travel should not be steeper than 1 in 48. The rise of any ramp shall not be more than 30 inches. The ramps shall not be less than 36 inches in width. And if they're used as part of an accessible route, they shall not be less than 48 inches. Ramps shall have landings at the top and bottom. Ramp landings shall not be less than 60 inches in length or width. Exterior ramps and approaches to exterior ramps shall be designed so that water will not accumulate on walking surfaces.
Dustin, if you can take a quick break. In fact, you might want to rest your voice for a little bit as you're reading through this. I did want to just say that one of the considerations for many of these, so you can see there's a lot of corridor, stair, exitway definitions that can get rather complicated from a code language perspective. That's why we felt like the figures were very important. There were some other things like ramps. Do we need to include ramps in this? And it was one concept that was discussed in many of our different topics was that in a single unit, a house or a duplex, you are responsible for your space. And with a duplex, there is one other family or entity that is responsible for the other space. Here you have 5 of those. You're responsible for your space, but there are 5 other individual, I'm going to say families, although who knows what that definition would be, but and you don't have any control over all of those. So it was felt like, for instance, for the ramps, it was important to put some criteria on there to make sure once you get out of the stairs that you can get to a safe location. So just wanted to add that. And I will ask, I know it's complex. Are there any questions about the egress section 104 or anything that we've gone through 101 through 104? And obviously we've asked for hands up, but the egress section 104 was pretty complex. And again, that's why we felt like the figures are important. I don't see any. So one other, as we get into the description of 105, which is the parking requirements, I just want to point out the very first words on on-site parking. It says where shared on-site parking is provided. There's nothing in the code that says thou shalt provide on-site shared parking. That's not in the building code or the residential code. That's planning. So all this addresses is if you do have shared on-site parking. And again, that was a whole lot of conversation at the tag level is, we don't have parking, so should we even have electrical vehicle charging? We felt like if there was going to be on-site parking that we needed to address that. So that's why all of the section 105 is included. So again, a little context. Dustin, if you can go ahead and walk us through that.
Gotcha. So like Roger said, where this is provided, not that it shall be provided. These provisions apply. So if you are providing on-site parking, 20% of spaces shall be EV-ready parking spaces, and calculations shall be rounded up to the nearest whole number, with an exception of EV-ready parking spaces are not required to be provided where there is no public utility or commercial power supply. That exception is similar to the ones in the IBC and the IRC requirements for EV charging.
And I will also mention Patrick Hanks was very instrumental in helping us draft these. These do align with the EV charging criteria that are currently proposed for, the 2024 code cycle. not necessarily the EV charging language that is in the current 2021. So this is meant to align with the currently proposed EV charging language that is in being proposed for the 2024 IBC.
Thank you. So similar to some of the stuff in the IRC IBC code language, we talk about the electrical requirements for that. A lot of folks don't feel that we should have any sort of electrical requirement in our realm of enforcement code. But for the EV charging infrastructure, a minimum of 40 amps dedicated to 40-volt branch circuit shall be installed for each EV-ready parking space. They shall terminate at a receptacle outlet or an EVSE, which is a electric vehicle supply equipment, in close proximity to the proposed location of the EV-ready parking space. The EV infrastructure shall be permitted to be designed and installed such that electrical vehicle supply equipment or future EVSE can serve multiple adjacent spaces with multiple output connections. Scott, go ahead.
Just curious, why why you guys didn't decide to use the type 1, type 2 chargers versus, just specifying that and letting the sort of the load work itself out versus putting an exact amperage.
So I don't recall type 1, type 2 chargers actually coming into the realm of conversation for us within this body, but we're trying to take the requirements that were existing in the IBC and the IRC and try to marry them together. And, like Roger said, we had Patrick Hanks help heavily with the drafting on the EV charging requirements. He was involved in the IBC revisions this code cycle, and I think that his contributions were good, but the type 1, type 2 chargers weren't a topic of discussion within this group.
Okay.
Todd, I see your hand up. Do you have some more background on that?
Yeah, and Scott, I think you have people that agree with that. I seem to remember, isn't it in statute that it was hard written at 40 amps and that was, ideally it would not be there, but I think that was a requirement. Am I wrong on that?
I think you're correct, Todd.
Yeah. And that's where it was in the RCW, so it got into the change for the IBC, and so then it got carried over to this section.
Okay.
Hope that answered your question, Scott.
Yeah,
And if we wanted to look at
fine.
the RCW, it's 1927.540. All right. Getting back into it, the infrastructure for accessible parking spaces. Where accessible parking spaces are required, electric vehicle charging shall be provided for accessible spaces in accordance with table XX 105.3, which you see below here. Accessible spaces provided with electric vehicle charging infrastructure to meet the requirements of that table shall be permitted to count towards the requirements of XX 105.1. Electrical vehicle charging infrastructure serving accessible parking spaces shall be permitted to be designated to serve adjacent automobile parking spaces that are not designated as accessible. So if we have a required minimum number of accessible spaces is 1 or 2, the required level of EV charging infrastructure is 1 EV ready space for both of those requirements.
Dustin,
Yes, sir.
Patrick sent through one
Oh, yes, I glazed over that.
grammatical, and it's that word electrical on right there should
Yeah.
just be electric. And I would like to just get that out. If we're going to approve this, it should be just electric, not electrical. You deleted. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me just save this as something new here real quick. Okay, electrical rooms and equipment. Electrical rooms or areas for dedicated electrical equipment shall be sized to accommodate the requirements of section XX 105.2. The electrical service and electrical system, including any on-site distribution transformer, shall have sufficient capacity to simultaneously charge all electric vehicles at all required EV-ready parking spaces at a minimum of 40 amperes each, with an exception that an automatic load management system is permitted to be used to adjust the maximum electrical capacity required for the EV-ready parking spaces. The ALMS must be designed to locate charging capacity among multiple future EVSE at a minimum of 16 amperes per EVSE. And that is where we're at with the EV charging requirements. There's no other parking requirements within this section.
Let's go ahead and get through, Dustin. I think just a minute, Scott. I think we can get through this. I know it's 10:35, but it should take us 5 or 10 more minutes, and then we'll take a break. Scott, go ahead.
Curious on so the EV ready spaces alignment with the accessible. Are we adding this as a requirement essentially? And there's already EV requirements on, but are we basically tying it to accessible and essentially doubling the requirements?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, there was talk about that. The intent is no, and I don't believe it. And I believe currently the way it is written, they are not additive. And there is, even in 105.3, it says where accessible parking are required. So Scott, certainly go through this with a fine-tooth comb. It's very good to have somebody who hasn't been deeply involved in it kind of read through and make sure they understand. We believe that this is not additive, but if you can look through that and come up with a clarification, or if it's not clear to you, I think assuming this gets through the BFRW, we can have that conversation at the full council meeting next Friday, where we'll be going through it. So,
okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
And if it is considered additive, that is not the intent.
Right.
John?
I think the language is right in the in the 1, 2, 3, fourth line of 105.3 shall be permitted to count toward the requirements.
Yeah.
There. I think that's where we clarified that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, accessibility. Where there are 4 or more dwelling units in a single structure, the provisions of Chapter 11 of the International Building Code shall apply. Multiplex buildings shall be considered a Group R2 occupancy for the purposes of accessibility requirements. So trying to keep this as streamlined as possible to maintain the presence in the International Residential Code text. This is another one that we didn't feel we could bring the requirements over, but instead point it over to the IBC. Elevators and platform lifts. This one was a bit of a topic. We did have a guest speaker from L&I attend the meetings to talk about elevator requirements and the standards that they are using. So elevators were provided in multiplex buildings for common use. Passenger elevators, limited use and limited application elevators shall comply with ASME A17.1 and CSA B44. There's no change to those standards as adopted in any other of our text areas, and is also aligned with what L&I elevator program is currently using. And these elevators that we were talking about are for the common use. So if they're outside of a dwelling unit, anything that's within the dwelling unit is a little different on that and has a different code text to point to. Where provided, platform lift shall comply with ASME A18.1. Elevators or platform lifts that are part of an accessible route required by Chapter 11 of the IBC shall comply with ICC A117.1. And pretty much, go ahead.
If I can just point out, Dustin, sorry if I interrupted. These are where provided. We are not requiring that you put elevators in these, but if you put them in, then you need to meet these criteria.
And also to just characterize a little bit more, The common use elevators are stretcher size elevators and accommodate a stretcher. The ones within a dwelling unit may not necessarily, are not required to be stretcher capable cars. Is that a
Um, I am not sure that that's correct. John, do you know?
Well, I think the intent was that we were not going to require them to be stretcher size.
Yes.
So because I think the IRC doesn't have the requirement for stretcher size, the fact that we're silent on it doesn't says that we're not requiring them.
Okay. So then my statement was wrong that there's any stretcher requirement on these, that all the elevators in the IRC are not required to be stretcher size elevators.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Getting to habitable attics are not permitted in multiplex buildings. Structural provisions, lateral design, the lateral force resisting system for multiplex buildings in seismic design category D2 exceeding 2 stories shall be designed by a registered design professional in accordance with accepted engineering practice. And that is the end of the code text.
All right, I'm going to ask for any questions. Attendee Ken, go ahead.
Okay, I know this was discussed during the tag, just with the definition of multiplex at the very top, and just making sure. I think this was the decision that was made, is that I can have a 3-story building, which is 2 stories above grade plane and a basement. I can have 3 stories, which is 3 stories above grade plane, but I cannot have 3 stories above a grade plane and a basement, because that would be considered 4 stories.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was the one other flag that I had that we needed to discuss. And maybe what I would like to do is introduce that and then to go ahead and take a break. We're more than halfway through our meeting. And we do need to talk about that at this BFRW committee meeting. This issue was brought up at our last meeting. The way it is currently written, it is 3 stories above grade plane. There are some figures, and Dustin, I don't remember where those came from at our meeting. I think in one of the codes.
They were in the IRC commentary
Okay.
on the definition of grade plane and story above grade plane.
So let's after the break, let's make sure we can pull those up so people can see them and understand them. The way it is currently written is 3 stories above grade plane, which means you could have basement levels in addition to the 3 stories above.
Well, that's why we have to debate that, because the
Yes.
definition of multiplex doesn't say above grade plane.
Right. And the above grade plane is, yeah. So that's what we need to debate and consider. And I think that having those figures from the IRC commentary will be very helpful. And I think with that, my suggestion is that we take a break till 10:50, an 8-minute break. And when we come back, hopefully we can pull those figures up and we can have this conversation. And the BFRW needs to make a decision on the intent of this, and then we will need to take our best stab at making sure that we go through and make the edits to this proposal. So let's plan on coming back here at 10:50, and we'll go ahead and take a break. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Are you pulling up that commentary? Thank you. I was trying to find it and not able to. So let's see, do we need to take attendance?
There's no need to, but we can monitor
Yeah.
as we get close to things.
Okay, Sherry, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Let me unmute there. I just wanted to offer that after this question came up in the last tag meeting, I emailed Representative Dewar to ask her what the legislative intent was. And what she responded back to me was that the intent of the bill is that the IRC for multiplexes matches the same height as the rest of the IRC, i.e., the 3 stories above grade plane.
Okay, thank you for that. So Dustin, do you, I guess I would ask you to walk through the grade plane conversation. In the figure that
So
go ahead.
I guess to talk about the stories above grade plane, we need to know what the grade plane is and some other definitions. So I duplicated here. If we get in here to the definition of grade, there's a lot of commentary in here from your scroll by, so just give me a moment here. So we have grade, the finished ground level adjoining the building at all exterior walls. I think that seems pretty straightforward, but really what we're looking for is the grade plane. And the definition of the grade plane is a reference plane representing the average of finished ground level adjoining the building at all exterior walls. Where the finished ground level slopes away from the exterior walls, the reference plane shall be established by the lowest points within the area between the building and the lot line, or where the lot line is more than 6 feet from the building between the structure and a 0.6 feet from the building. So suffice that to say, in the picture that we were looking at, the grade plane is not necessarily, it is defined by the line across the building, but where we're counting the stories above grade plane is going to be at the kind of median mark of the grade along the wall and within 6 feet from the wall. So this picture that we're showing is just a cutaway showing the line right up against the wall. So there is an additional component of how you would interpret that. But for the sake of our discussion, let's just say that the grade plane is the average height of all the soil against the exterior wall of the building for the purpose of this diagram. So you'll see right here at this mark, that is showing the average grade plane on this bottom story here. And they're showing it as 6 feet above and essentially, oh, I don't have a great answer for what that diagram is showing below, but it's around 6 feet below. I thought I heard somebody.
I actually think that it would be, I'm calculating the dimensions on the right, and it looks to me like it's 8'4". So that would be only 2 feet.
I gotcha. Okay. So as we run back through definitions, and anybody feel free to jump in and help me get us across to what a story above grade plane actually is. So we've talked about the grade plane. Let's go to the definition of story above grade plane. And sorry for using super small stuff. It's just so I can get the whole diagram on the screen for you guys at once. But a story above grade plane is any story having its finished floor surface entirely above the grade plane, which seems pretty obvious. I'll stop there to point out this middle story is the floor entirely above the grade plane. Then, or in which the finished surface of the floor next above is either of the following: more than 6 feet above grade plane, or more than 12 feet above the finished ground level at any point. I don't think that particular provision is depicted in this graphic here. I guess I don't have a good way to blow that up. Let me just go back to the website here. So looking in here, going back to that, more than 6 feet above the grade plane, or more than 12 feet above the finished ground level at any point. Right here, we're more than 6 feet above. If this was more than 6 feet, this would be a story above grade plane. But right now, this is a story below grade plane. Is that an accurate statement from those on the call?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, the 12 feet where you'll see that a lot is in commercial structures where there's a parking garage that's buried, but the entrance isn't. And there's a 12-foot difference at just that area because of the height needed. So that's where you'll sometimes see that. You don't usually see 12-foot plates on a single family or even a multifamily.
Thank you. And so I guess that leads us to the question at hand, which is, should this appendix apply to multiplex housing that is just 3 stories, irrespective of the grade plane? Or should it be 3 stories above grade plane, which would then allow multiple stories below grade plane and increase the total height, or I guess the total capacity for the egress systems? Angela.
So this doesn't change the number of allowed units because it's not units per floor, it's units total. So we would still have the same number of maximum units. And when you have a basement, you've got a converging exit versus people using the same one to go down. You've got them coming from different directions. So I I honestly think that the intent was to meet the definition of residential. I know from speaking to Doer, we talked her down from wanting this to be 6 stories because it would basically kind of violate the laws of what the residential code is. So I would be leaning towards the 3 stories above grade plane personally.
John, I will get to you. I think John was first, and then I will get to Scott. But Dustin, can I clarify the picture that we're looking at right now would be 2 stories above grade plane with with one basement,
No,
correct?
that's 3 because it's 6 feet above the floor plate, 6 feet above the grade plane right there. It's 7 feet. So that's actually 3 stories.
Oh, I got you. The point of 6 feet is above the grade plane.
Right, which you calculate based
Okay.
on the averages and the calculations.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Angela, for that clarification. So, I think John was first. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just as a note of information, the exiting provisions we put in there were predicated on the kind of the tables that are in IBC. And so if we were to go down this road of saying 3 stories above grade plane, which I don't object to because yes, that's allowed in the IRC, I would suggest that we might want to consider limiting it to 1 basement. It's fairly unlikely you're going to get to more than 1, but if you have a really, really steeply sloping lot, you might be able to get there. And you know, the tables in the IBC for the single stair, which is what we're mostly contemplating for these, and the exiting provisions were written around assuming we've got a single stair. The tables in the IBC only go down to 1 basement.
Okay, thank you, John. And I want to remind everybody, if it gets too complicated and you get a very steep site, you can always build this as just build it out of the IBC. So, complicated maybe means this doesn't work in the IRC and you have to go to the IBC. Scott, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that I agree with Angela on this one. I think that keeping it as written makes sense.
Okay. Other comments? Richard, go ahead.
Thanks, Roger. So if we if we leave that language above grade plane, as was brought up in our last meeting, that means we're silent on basements.
Unless we put something in that limited it to 1 level, 1 basement level.
That's right. Yep.
And Dustin, if you can go, so Scott's got his hand up. If you can go to um, the picture again, there was discussion from the fire folks, and Dan, I don't, I guess I'd ask for your knowledge on this one, but there was conversation about from fire access in that situation when you're on a hillside
Yes.
and
Yes.
reachable.
Yeah, it
So,
comes down to ladder access. And so if you have the one there that's showing and our road is up at the top, I mean, if the road's at the bottom, we can, then we have to have the aerial apparatus um, requirements hit that, we have space to put out the outriggers and that kind of stuff. So that's our concern is if we get too tall there, um, and let's just say the fire's on the left, and everybody has to exit out the right, and then we can't get a ladder truck up. That's the concern. We always look at the worst case scenario. But yeah,
um,
that's where we're looking is because especially if it's a real steep slope where you basically would have two basements, we may not have adequate access.
okay. Dan, in the IRC, EEROs are required in bedrooms, is that correct?
Yeah, in the IRC, yes. And if
And
I think I'm right on that, right, Angela? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to go into. I'm fairly
know.
good with the code, but I want to defer to the experts on that. But yes, EERO is required.
I will remind everybody there was conversation about the EEROs in the 6-story single exit condition. What happens even if you have at 6 stories, but you don't have fire truck access? Should you require EEROs there? And the thought was, if you are a resident and you're thinking ahead and having a ladder, a rope ladder available for exiting, that got some folks comfortable as a reason why we required EEROs on all bedroom windows, even on the 6th floor of the single exit. So, um, Dan, it's just a similar situation here. If you have an EERO in the bedroom at that upper right, that condition is not any worse than what we're allowing in the single exit.
Yeah, and the code does talk about when you have certain heights, and I don't want to quote it. That's why we have the books.
Right.
We have to provide adequate space for a ladder truck, so that's
Right.
still going to be required.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Um, Dustin, if I'm going to say if the comfort level of the BFRW would be to limit it to one basement level. I'm wondering can you go to section XX 101?
Yes.
Is in that scope document. I'm looking at our proposal. Yeah, yeah. What am I looking at? Oh, multiplex buildings, part 1. Oh, I was in part 2.
Oh.
Yeah, go to part 2. Is item 3 modifying item 3 or adding an item 4 that would limit it to one basement level? Would that make sense? And I guess I'm asking for general consensus here. I've got John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I mean, that's kind of what we talked about. I was mentioning earlier. There are a couple ways you can do that. One would be to add an item 4 there. The other way would be to just say the building in item 3, the building shall not exceed one basement and 3 stories.
John, I want to just, that may be code, correct code language. It just seems to me that we're getting confusion where somebody could interpret that as 4 stories. I kind of like having the one basement identified separately below.
Technically, it is 4 stories. It's just 3 stories above grade plane and a basement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I am going to, if if there are no other comments, John, your hand is still up. Scott, go ahead.
Just, I wasn't part of the tag, but I'm just kind of curious, what is the driver of limiting basements? I heard, on about, the fire access. That makes complete sense. Are there other sort of in people's minds with, drivers that we would want to restrict the number of basements or number of levels below grade?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, it's what I mentioned earlier is that the limits on having a single exit is I think the other driver. If you have more than one, if you're down in the second basement down below grade plane, then you need to have 2 exits out of there. And we're assuming these buildings are only going to have one.
Okay.
And Scott, again, if I go back to my comment that if it does get complicated, if you've got 2 basement levels and you're trying to build this, maybe you just need to go to the IBC. There's not a this construction is, I'm not going to say halfway, but it's somewhere in between the IBC and the IRC on many levels. And so you're always allowed in a complex situation to go to the IBC. But Angela?
So yeah, so this appendix isn't meant to encompass every complicated design that an architect can possibly come up with in their head, because trust me, I've seen what they come up with and it's amazing. But it's meant to be a simplified process for more just standard buildings to be built by basically individuals that may not be fully familiar with the IBC and going through that entire code to pick out the individual pieces that apply to a multifamily. This is to make it more accessible. So it's basically just pulling things in to a single location to build it. So if they want to get into 2 basements, 3 stories, everything like that, then they need to move into the more complicated code. So again, this is just more of a standardized for more basic buildings.
Thanks for that. That's helpful.
Yes. Thank you for saying that much more clearly than I did, Angela. So I am ready to entertain a motion. Certainly open to more conversation as well or discussion. I see Marcus, go ahead.
I sorry, I had to hop off for a work meeting and I'm just coming in. Just wanted to just check, was this kind of the grade plane conversation the only thing that
Yeah.
was okay?
There
Okay.
was one editorial, a word electrical that should have been electric. That's
Okay.
changed down below, and now we are debating the grade plane question. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we are heading towards allowing a basement. Yeah, there's the one editorial that got caught by Patrick. We are heading towards allowing keeping the grade plane language, allowing basements,
Right.
but limiting it to 1 basement level. So you don't get into that more complicated where you're 2 basement levels and that kind of thing. That's what Angela said. You're then moving towards having to go into the IBC to design.
Yes. Okay. Yep. All right. Thanks
John?
for catching me up. Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus. John?
The only question I have is whether we also then would need to modify the definition. Because right now it just says 3 stories, which would include basements.
That's that's up. Oh, right there.
Yeah, the multiplex. Um, up to 3 stories and 1 basement. I don't know if you want it 3 stories above grade plane and 1 basement. I mean, do we need to reflect the same language? Now, someone might, for instance, say that by definition, it's only got,
If John, if we just added above grade plane there, a building up to 3 stories above grade plane, and in this definition, we're silent on basements, but then we limit it to 1 basement level down below, would that be
I think that would still work because, yeah, we're limiting it down below.
okay?
That's my.
Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just real quickly, um do the other terms, like do townhomes and other stuff, have in their definition, do they have above grade plane, or is it just 3 stories? Because I guess I'm thinking the other building types in IRC also have this kind of allowance the
Basements.
for the basement. I mean, it probably doesn't matter either way. I guess this makes it very clear and it just matches the same thing, but that was just something that popped in my head in terms of if we're to maybe go and like somebody quickly look up the definition of like two-family or town. Okay, played right there. Not more than 3 stories above grade plane. Great.
Angela, can you answer that question, or do you have something else?
Yeah, no, that's what I was just gonna say. I had section or this same thing where it's the scoping for the IRC where it says all of the structures that can be in there and limits them to not more than 3 stories above grade plane in height. So yeah.
And Marcus, I would even go responding to your question, if the IRC allows 2 basement levels for a duplex or a single family residence, in this case, we are allowed, that's a one or 2 dwelling units. This is 6. So having the more restrictive limit of only 1, I think
Yeah.
is prudent.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm fine with that. And I think Angela answered my other question, which is above in the scope, it says above grade plane. So we can just match that and say the above grade plane in the multiplex definition. So thank you.
okay. All right. Other comments, or is somebody ready to make a motion?
All right, so we're looking to move this to the full council for approval. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I make a motion that we move the multiplex appendix forward to the full council for consideration.
Can I add as a friendly amendment to that, just as modified on the screen?
As modified on the screen.
Thank you.
Dan, I'll second that.
Thanks, Dan. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. That was a heavy lift. I'm glad we got through it. Getting back to agenda, opinion request. Dustin, you're going to need to drive this one. I'm only moderately aware of the details of the opinion request.
Gotcha. All right. So there's some background on this one. In 2024, we issued an opinion out that touches on these same sections but doesn't answer this specific question. And the opinion is a 24-08. And that opinion talks about the required separation between attached dwelling units. So we have some state modifications that allow for ADUs to be constructed within an existing dwelling and not requiring full revamp of the separation walls between there. If we have attached stuff built outside of an existing dwelling, we have separation walls in there. And then the spirit of that previous opinion was talking about shared accessory spaces. Listed in there was laundry rooms, and entryways. There's one other one that's escaping me at the moment. And that opinion didn't really address whether or not a attached dwelling unit or duplex should be allowed to have a shared egress space. So, i.e., you have a separated shared space with doors into each dwelling unit. And then are they allowed to come into that shared space and use one egress door? And this opinion's, I agree that there's some confusion present over the sections that we're referencing here. They asked two questions in this opinion, which is the first is an attached additional dwelling unit or duplex dwelling unit permitted to egress through the other unit? In accordance with a lot of other stuff that we have in there, you're not allowed to egress through garages. Some of the stuff that we have in the appendices we were developing don't allow you to egress through other spaces. And based on the sections R311.1 and 311.2, it would be my interpretation that you are not allowed to egress through a separate dwelling unit to get to the public way, yard, or court. So the answer to question one is no, an additional dwelling unit or duplex unit cannot egress through another dwelling unit. But then that gets us to question number two, which is, are attached dwelling units permitted to have a shared egress area? My personal opinion is that I feel that they should be allowed to if they're separated in accordance with 302.5. I might have the 302.3, sorry. And but when you look back to R311.1, it requires a continuous and unobstructed path to opening directly to a public way, yard, or court that opens to a public way. And then with addition of R311.2, it requires not less than one egress door for each dwelling unit. So even though in our previous opinion that the common spaces are allowed, the shared entryway, I think based on just the straight code reading, doesn't allow for shared egress. I could see a fantastical configuration where you have the shared egress space and then the two required egress doors are within that same space and you can come out into the same space and use two doors. But I don't think that that's the desire that folks are trying to install here. And so my draft answer for this one is that no, a shared egress space is not possible with the consideration of R311.1 and 311.2. I'll pause. Angela, you have your hand up?
Actually, Dustin,
Nope.
can you clarify? So this is a request to respond to these questions for the 2021 IRC, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up. Angela, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, yeah, the code may specifically say that, but I'm just gonna say that we do it a lot where there's a vestibule situation in the front, especially with split levels, duplexes that are stacked or something like that, where you have one common entry and they go up and down, or especially when you add, when any of those. So I'm just gonna say we do it. I guess I haven't read the language really tightly lately. So I would have to look at this closer.
And I mean, that aligns with my sentiment that I feel like it should be allowed, but the way the wording is written seems to not allow it.
Other comments? I kind of wanted to get on the table our possible responses. We've been asked a question. Clarify for me if we answer it is just an opinion. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not a binding action.
So somebody could still interpret it differently.
Correct.
And we as a BFRW could answer this question and say we agree, and that would be the end of it. We would direct you to go ahead and respond in that direction, or we could also move it up to the full council for discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
And we can modify the answers I have here and respond as well.
Yes. Okay, other comments? I guess, Dustin, if I were to be asked to make a decision, I would want to look at 311.1 and 311.2
Okay.
to see exactly what that language says.
Let me pop that open for you guys.
And I have a hand. Micah, go ahead.
I'll let you guys finish. I mean, it might get my questions answered. Thanks.
Okay. I'm sure you'll have an opinion, Micah, so feel free to let us have it whenever you would like.
And so we are still viewing the commentary here, but this is, I guess, actually what I need to do is show you guys the Washington State Code. All right. So 311.1 means of egress. Dwellings shall be provided with the means of egress in accordance with this section. The means of egress shall provide a continuous and unobstructed path of vertical and horizontal egress travel from all portions of the dwelling to the required egress door without requiring travel through a garage. The required egress door shall open directly into a public way or to a yard or court that opens to a public way. And then in conjunction with that one, the egress door, 311.2, not less than one egress door shall be provided for each dwelling unit. The egress door shall be side hinged and shall provide a clear width of not less than 32 inches or measured between the face of the door and the stop with the door open at 90 degrees. The clear height of the door shall be not less than 78 inches in height measured from the top of the threshold to the bottom of the stop. Other doors shall not be required to comply with these minimum dimensions. Egress doors shall be readily openable from the inside of the dwelling without the use of a key or special knowledge or effort.
So you're suggesting what they're asking, or is it possible is you have, I think Angela called it a vestibule, where you have two egress doors coming and into the vestibule and then you exit out, right?
Correct.
And the only thing that you're suggesting wouldn't allow that is the last sentence of 311.1 that says the required egress door shall open directly into a public way or to a yard or court.
There's that and the one egress door for each dwelling unit of 311.2.
But it says not less than one. So if you had one egress door that got you into the vestibule and then another egress door that got you to the public way, that's two egress doors, but would that be, it seems to me the not less than doesn't say that you can only have one. Scott,
That is the question.
okay.
Well, I'm just, I mean, there's a lot of variations on this. The one that comes to mind for me is that, like, and Angela, maybe this is not really what this is trying to address, but like, what if, you have a common space that, you have units that exit into a common space with a single exit. I mean, I think that's what this is trying to prevent, right? Like, they want people to exit into out of danger, essentially. I mean, am I misinterpreting this?
Um, I didn't know if Dustin were you going to answer or Angela.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's trying to, yeah, keep you, I think, from, well, okay, so I believe this is the first code cycle that the common areas were introduced as being specifically allowed for IRC I'm looking at it, the shared accessory rooms. This is the first cycle that these are in. And then I'm trying to see what are they under. Three. And they're under two family dwellings only. Right? Yeah. And And so that's what I'm looking at as far as like the vestibule type of thing. I specifically speaking, because of that last sentence in 311.1, a vestibule serving 2 units doesn't meet uh, egress. Um, mm, I don't know, maybe it's something that got overlooked when that section got added, or it's just something that people do anyway. Strictly speaking, it does say that your egress door has to go directly outside, basically. And so, unless, I mean, yeah. So, if you're reading the code very specifically, and I guess it does say that no, you can't use a vestibule.
The variation that I was thinking of is that you potentially could take a house and build out multiple units and have everybody exit into the living room and out the door, right? Like you could literally,
Well, if you don't
which I
meet the
think,
definition of townhouse, then you can't do that anyway. It becomes an IBC structure and you don't fit under the IRC anyway. In order
okay,
to do this, you can only be two family of stacked or side by side, or townhouses that are side by side, or you're a multiplex. If you're getting into what you're talking about, you would become a multiplex where you've got to meet those exiting requirements, in which you
okay.
can exit through a common space because it's corridors, stairs, everything like that.
I'm just curious, like, why are they asking this question? Because it seems really clear in the three that it was at 311 or that we looked at it, it
Because,
seemed fairly straightforward.
right, but again, we get a lot of, and again, I happen to be in a jurisdiction that we have allowed them to egress through rated vestibules, which obviously is a sort of violation of that last sentence and could technically, I guess, be kind of a alternate means, in my opinion, as the one that approves those. Um, so then they go to another jurisdiction that says, nope, it says this. And so Bellevue, as a large jurisdiction that's probably seen a lot of it, are coming and saying, hey, what's your opinion on what's our opinion on it? That's, yeah.
Um,
I don't know if I'm making things clearer just for.
I think what everybody, if I can summarize what I hear people saying is by the letter of the code, we think that Dustin's answer is correct, that no, it's not allowed. But we also all kind of agree that the intent of the code is if you're exiting into a rated vestibule, it should be okay. And some people allow it. So I go back to, do we want to remain silent? Do we not answer the question? Do we answer the question officially as no, as Dustin has it, knowing that cities are still allowed to interpret that the way they want to through, what do you call it, Angela?
Alternate
Means.
means
Yeah.
or alternate methods.
Scott, go ahead.
I mean, I like the way you said that, Roger, and I would lean in the direction of trying to be clear and not evasive and basically say, if they're exiting into a rated vestibule, then and make it an opinion, right?
So you're suggesting, and yeah, the answer may be no assured egress per section 311.1. A shared egress is not possible, but then you would suggest adding an answer. However, is the BFRW's opinion that that would meet the intent of the code?
Yeah.
I don't like dancing around the bush either. If that's what we think, let's say that. But Micah, go ahead. What do you think?
Thanks, Roger. Um, I, I agree with Dustin on question one in that's asking, is it permitted to egress through another unit? That answer is clearly no. However,
Correct.
I believe question two, the answer would be yes, you could have the shared egress, especially with the changes, as Angela indicated, that came in this cycle in the 2021 under R302 3, including 3.4 and 3.5, where you've got opening protection. You can actually have openings between these two units as long as they're protected. So I would clearly agree with Angela that I would allow a shared space that you could then egress from, as long as you're providing those opening protectives per 302 R30235 for shared accessory rooms. I know maybe they wouldn't call it an accessory room, but I think the answer to number two should be a yes, you can, per some of the added language that Washington has included in the 2021 code. Thanks.
I'm looking at that too, and that. Thank you, Micah. That kind of moves the needle on my opinion a little bit. So could we draft a response? What would the draft response say that, given R 302.3, the Washington Code amendments in R 302.3 that allows for shared accessory rooms? That the answer is yes, you can egress into a shared accessory room, assuming it has, and I have not read all of 302.3, but as long as it meets the criteria in 302.3.
And it's that's specific to two-family dwellings, not townhomes.
Not what?
Not townhouses. It's specific to two-family dwellings.
Oh,
I mean, it would be kind of tough to get townhouses with a common exit. I mean, I'm sure they could figure a way, but that shared space or the shared accessory rooms is under the two-family dwelling section.
can you clarify for me the difference between townhouse and two-family dwellings?
Townhouse is 3 or more units with that each have 2 exposed sides. So basically a row or a U or an L of attached dwelling units.
Right.
Can still of any number can still be in the IRC as long as every unit has at least 2 walls that are exposed.
And then what is a two-family dwelling?
Duplex.
That is not a duplex, okay?
It's a duplex. Yeah, and it can be stacked or side by side, but it's limited to 2. As soon as you go to 3, then it falls under townhouses and those requirements.
So your suggestion, the answer would be yes for two-family dwellings per 302.3. For townhouses, the answer would be no because of 311.1. Micah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
but Micah might tell me I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to tell you wrong. I'm actually going to tell you you're right. And I think that the simple add is the townhouse, by definition, the townhouse unit is defined as a single family, where technically 302.3 is about two-family dwellings. And just one more modification there, Dustin, in question 1, we may want to state two-family dwelling and not duplex, since we are pointing or should be pointing to 302.3 for criteria. Just a thought, because technically duplex is not in the IRC. But I agree with you, Angela.
Yeah, some two-family dwellings. So I'm saying that. Okay. Todd, go ahead.
So then in the answer for 2, yeah, I'm leaning to, I agree with yes for the two dwelling. Do we need to address townhouses though? Because those are technically attached dwelling units also, correct? And I don't remember how the question was originally asked.
Does that clarify?
And then, is that how the question was asked though?
No, I can pull the question request is posted for the meeting.
It says is an ADU or duplex dwelling unit permitted to egress.
But we do have the liberty of crafting the question so that the answer is more code accurate.
I don't think you need
Yeah, I
the word
think
attached.
Chair, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
I guess I would prefer that we just be complete then and just cover everything. And then including, that in the 2024, the intent is to also define corridors in the multiplex. Just kind of lay the whole spectrum out there and give a useful opinion.
Angela, go ahead.
I mean, don't put the 2024. I mean, that's speculating on what action is going to be taken. But I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was going to
thinking
say.
through the problem is that's how my mind is working right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is an opinion on the 21 code.
Correct.
So it's the current. And then I'm sorry, can you read the question again that they submitted, Justin?
Yeah, one moment. All right. So is an ADU or duplex dwelling unit permitted to egress through the other main unit? If not, are they permitted to have a shared egress area that is protected per R30235?
Okay, yeah. So the question is referring to two-family dwelling units. So I don't think we don't need to address townhouses, in my opinion.
I think I agree with you. Micah?
I'll throw out an agreement on that. I think if we get into adding other topics where the SBCC would get into more of commentary or interpretation, which may not be accurate, especially based on the question is not about 3 units, it's about 2 units. And that answer may change if the question is, can we have 2 attached ADUs and then egress through a common space? And that may be a completely different answer based on code language. Thanks.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That makes sense.
Okay. So are we ready as a BFRW committee to make a motion and approve these answers, thereby precluding a discussion at the full council meeting next Friday?
I move that the BFRW approve this interpretation draft as shown on the screen.
Thanks, Angela.
I'll second that. Tom?
Thanks, Tom. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We have one more topic of business. I was concerned that we weren't going to make it, but with 20 minutes left, I think we will. This is something, there is a code change proposal 24 GP1 053 that has been approved by the State Building Code Council to move into CR 102. There has been conversations amongst several people, including the proponent, which is WABO. I'm trying to get to it. Specifically Julius with the city of Bellevue, but I think that it comes from, the proponent is actually WABO. That now I'm stumbling. The code change proposal suggests that we approve ASCE 722 minimum design loads and associated criteria for buildings and other structures with supplement number 1 and supplement number 2. Supplement, if you go down a little bit, supplement number 1 provides approved revisions to the standard requirements in advance of the next edition, ASCE 728. The revisions are generally intended to clarify the intent of the requirements and correct the reference standards and documents. So WABO supports really just including supplement number 1. It updates, it clarifies some things, making sure that we include that in the 2024 code adoption. Supplement number 2, however, brings in flood hazard areas, and it basically moves for buildings in risk category 2, 3, and 4. You basically have to consider in a flood hazard area if you are in the 500-year floodplain rather than the 100-year floodplain. That would impact, it would have a number of different impacts throughout the code, probably have some impacts on even some zoning code questions, maybe insurance questions. And so WABO has requested that withdrawn the request to agree to include supplement number 2. And so the proposal in front of us is to modify 24 GP1 053 revision 1 to exclude supplement number 2, but keep supplement number 1. And Dustin, I do have 2 edits. Did you? Oh, you did cross out the S's. Okay, I saw that in number 1. So Micah, you're on WABO. I don't know if there's any other, if you want to present anything, expand on my explanation.
No, I don't have anything to expand. I appreciate it. We definitely don't want to drive any additional costs for this advanced adoption of supplement 2 that would increase that flood plain area to the 500-year risk category. So
okay,
definitely want to strike that, at least for that reason. Thanks.
John?
Yeah, I think part of the reason also we're withdrawing is that there's some other coordination that has to happen with ASCE 24, which also governs design in flood hazard areas. And we hadn't done that part of it. The idea is that ASCE 7 and ASCE 24 have to kind of go forward together, and we hadn't done that coordination work. So that's the other reason for doing that. Just as a note for people's information, the 500-year floodplain supplement 2 is working its way through the ICC process, the IBC process for adoption in the 2027 code. We are just not going ahead and pre-adopting it. So there's a mix of how it's going through, but right now it is, most of it has been approved so far.
Okay, thanks for that additional, John. Yeah, I had forgotten to add the coordination. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, and just as another point of possible confusion, FEMA's working on floodplain maps, at least in Whitman County. Ours are not final yet for the update, and it's probably that way around the state and other areas too.
Okay, Todd?
Thank you for all this. The coordination piece seems, obvious that if it's not ready. I'm curious though, what does this mean when 722 is referenced in the next, that the coordination that doesn't address then the 100 to 500, or once it is coordinated, it's not as severe of a shift, or that's just what it's going to be? I guess another way to phrase that question is, do we anticipate in the next cycle we would debate whether or not we would exclude supplement number 2?
So my understanding, and Dustin, I see your hand up now, but my understanding,
can't click the button.
Okay, my understanding, Todd, is that in the 2024 code, we're saying we are not including supplement number 2. In the next code cycle in 2027, Supplement number 2 is going to be in ASCE 722. It's going to be integrated into, assuming it goes through, as John says, it will be integrated. And so we will need to address it in the next code cycle. John, is that a correct?
It won't exactly be incorporated into 722, but it will be incorporated into the 2027 IBC. So this 2027 IBC will look something like this.
So we will need to address it in the 2027 code cycle, Todd. And actually, I think getting everybody on notice that this will be a topic of conversation in the next code cycle that we need to be aware of. So, Dustin, did you have additional? Yes.
Yeah, so in my previous work, I was the floodplain manager, and it's my understanding that across the state, everyone involved in the NFIP, that's the federal subsidizing of the insurance programs here in the state. I think that everybody's basing all their flood mapping and all the flood provisions off the 100-year floodplain, and we're talking about the 500-year versus the 100-year is going to expand that application of floodplain provisions significantly. So that's why we're not wanting to do this right now. But if this comes in as a model code, does that mean that is FEMA adopting a 500-year floodplain for application within like Region X? That would be my question, is if this is coming down from the NFIP, we should definitely be getting ahead of it a little bit further.
John, do you have an answer for that?
Not probably definitive, but certainly FEMA's been involved at the IBC level at trying to push. Well, let me put it this way. Let me back off on that. I'm sorry. FEMA has not been allowed to participate at the national level for the last couple hearings. However, people who are working with the floodplain managers who used to represent FEMA are working on this and putting these proposals into the IBC. How does that work with the NFIP? I'm not entirely certain. What ASCE 7 does is just saying, okay, if you're in the 500-year floodplain, you still have to design for the flood loading. It may not say that, how shall I say, it may not correspond with the NFIP program, and that I don't know how the NFIP program gets updated, but I'm sure, yeah, there are folks who would like to see that, I'm sure, get updated as well. The main thing being about this is that they are finding, of course, that flood damage is getting very expensive, and trying to get people out of the flood areas is part of the impetus behind all of these efforts.
Todd?
Okay, so thank you. Just to summarize what I think we're all hearing is there's still benefit to adding supplement number 1 when there's not correlation problems there. Supplement number 2 has correlation problems in the standard and external factors, which insurance and so forth. So it's not ready. And everyone prepare for a shift in the next code cycle.
That is a very good summary. I wish I had been able to summarize it so succinctly. So what I will be looking for is a motion from the BFRW committee to send this modification to 24 GP 1053 onto the State Building Code Council for consideration, hopefully at next week's meeting, to modify it, modify 24 GP 1053 that goes into the CR 102 process.
So moved.
Thank you, Angela. Do I have a second?
This is Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. We have agenda item number 8, which is other business. Is there any other business that we need to discuss?
Not for me.
I am not seeing any hands. So with that, Todd, I see you took your
I was just going to say congratulations and thank you to everyone. This was such a enormous lift, so this is a big milestone.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.
See y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
You bet.